When toxic people can't control you, they'll try to control the way others see you. That's their last weapon, their last desperate attempt to hold on to the power they once had over your mind. Understand something. Toxic people don't fear your anger, your reactions, or your words. They fear your strength. They fear your independence. They fear that you no longer need them. And when you stop needing them, you become dangerous to their ego. This is why the moment you stop responding to their manipulation, they shift the battlefield. They move from attacking you directly to attacking your reputation, your relationships, your image. They twist stories. They exaggerate moments. They paint themselves as the victim and you as the villain. Not because you are wrong, but because you stopped playing their game. Toxic people survive on control. They want emotional leverage. They want you confused, guilty, reactive. The moment you step out of that cycle, they lose their grip and they panic. So they do what they've always done. They manipulate, they gossip, they recruit others into their drama. They create a version of you that supports their narrative because the truth, the real you, is too powerful for them to handle. But here's where your strength truly shows. You don't chase explanations. You don't run behind people trying to correct the lies told about you. You let your character speak where your voice doesn't need to. You let your consistency speak where words cannot. Because the people meant to be in your life will see through the fog. Real ones recognize real energy. Genuine hearts recognize genuine intentions. You don't fight dirty. You don't lower yourself. You don't match their chaos with more chaos. You rise quietly, steadily, intentionally. Your silence becomes your armor. Your progress becomes your proof. You walk forward, not to win against them, but to protect your peace, your purpose, your life. Understand this deeply. Toxic people expose themselves. You don't have to expose them. Their patterns, their contradictions, their drama, their lies, these things eventually reveal who they truly are. Every time they try to destroy you, they're actually destroying their own credibility. Because over time, people notice something. You remain the same while they remain chaotic. You stay consistent while they stay dramatic. You stay focused while they stay reactive. That contrast is your victory. Your job is not to fix toxic people. Your job is not to justify your choices. Your job is not to convince anyone to see your truth. Your job is to protect your mental space, honor your boundaries, and keep building your life. Let them talk, let them twist stories, let them try to rewrite your role in their narrative. None of it can stop your growth unless you give them permission. When you detach from a toxic person, you take away the source of their emotional fuel. That drives them wild. They will say you changed. They will say you betrayed them. They will say you became cold. But what actually happened is simple. You finally saw your worth and you stopped negotiating your value. They can't handle that. They want the version of you that tolerated their disrespect, their double standards, their drama. They want the version of you that apologized for things you didn't do. They want the version of you that felt guilty for choosing yourself, but that version of you no longer exists. You outgrew them, and they can't stand it. So when toxic people can't control you, they'll try to control the story about you. But here's the truth. You don't need to defend yourself when your life becomes your evidence. You don't need to argue when your evolution speaks louder. You don't need to react when your peace is stronger than their noise. Always remember this. You are not defined by someone else's insecurities. You are not defined by the narrative someone builds out of fear or jealousy. You are defined by your actions, your integrity, and your growth. Keep moving, keep becoming stronger, keep choosing peace. Let them talk while you transform. Let them judge while you evolve. Let them doubt while you rise. Because the moment you become uncontrollable is the moment you become unstoppable. When you stop reacting to toxic people, you take away their power. And that loss triggers their need to control the narrative about you. This shift doesn't happen quietly. It shakes the very foundation of the dynamic they once depended on. Toxic people rely on emotional chaos to stay in control. They want you confused, overthinking, apologizing for things you did not do, questioning yourself, questioning your worth, questioning your intuition. Once you step out of that loop, you disrupt the system they built, and that disruption threatens them more than anything you could ever say or do. They don't fear your strength because you suddenly became stronger. They fear your strength because you discovered it. And once you discover it, you can't unsee it. When you stop reacting, you break the emotional contract they assumed you'd honor forever. They counted on your predictable patterns, your desire to fix things, your willingness to understand them, your guilt, your empathy. These traits made you easy to control. Every time you tried to clarify, defend yourself, or calm a situation, you fed their power. Not because you were weak, but because you cared. Toxic people exploit care. They take your empathy and twist it into obligation. They take your loyalty and twist it into silence. They take your kindness and twist it into compliance. So, the moment you stop reacting, you signal something dangerous. You are no longer under their emotional influence. This terrifies them because it means they no longer own your attention. And attention is the currency of control. Toxic people feed off your energy, your confusion, your defensiveness, your explanations. When those suddenly disappear, they have nothing left to hold on to. So they shift their tactics. They turn to what they believe is their last weapon, the narrative. If they can't control you, they'll try to control the story about you. They'll twist the truth, exaggerate situations, paint themselves as victims, portray you as unstable, ungrateful, selfish, cold. They perform this drama not because any of it is real, but because they are desperate to maintain an image where they still have power over something, even if that something is other people's perception of you. This is why your lack of reaction becomes such a threat. You're not just ignoring them, you're breaking the system they survive on. They will test you. They will poke, provoke, guilt trip, blame shift, and do everything possible to drag you back into the emotional arena. They don't want resolution, they want control. And they can't regain that control unless you give them an emotional response. When you refuse to react, you deny them access to your mind. When you refuse to respond, you deny them the opportunity to twist your words. When you refuse to engage, you deny them the stage they thrive on. But your silence isn't passive. It's strategic. It's strength disguised as calm. It's discipline disguised as simplicity. It's you saying, without using words, that you will no longer participate in a game designed to break you. This silence forces them to confront something they've avoided for years, their own behavior. They don't want to face it, so instead they project it. They blame you for the chaos they created. They accuse you of the very things they've done. They rewrite stories so they can live with themselves. This is not about you. It is about their inability to take accountability. As they scramble to regain control, you begin to regain yourself. You notice your mind becoming clearer, your emotions becoming calmer, your internal world becoming stronger. This is when you realize that the real battle wasn't between you and them. It was between you and the version of yourself that once accepted the bare minimum as normal. When you stop reacting, you stop negotiating with disrespect, you stop allowing manipulation to disguise itself as love, you stop letting toxic people define your reality. And this growth becomes visible. People start noticing the difference in your energy, your confidence, your boundaries. Even the toxic person notices it, which is why they fight it so aggressively. They feel the shift long before they admit it. They can feel your emotional independence, and it shakes them because you were never supposed to heal. You were never supposed to wake up. You were never supposed to see your own value. They benefited from your confusion, and now they have to deal with your clarity. Their reaction to your non-reaction reveals everything. It shows how much control they thought they had. It shows how dependent they were on your silence, your compliance, your emotional availability. It shows how fragile their sense of power actually was. They believed they could influence your emotions forever, but you prove that control is only real if you allow it. And once you withdraw that permission, the illusion collapses. This collapse is where your transformation begins. You start to understand that not everyone deserves access to you. Not everyone deserves your explanations. Not everyone deserves your forgiveness. Not everyone deserves a seat in your life. You begin to realize that peace is not something someone gives you, it's something you choose by walking away from what disrupts it. And the more you choose peace, the more toxic people fall apart trying to get your attention back. They want the old version of you because the new version threatens everything they depended on. Your strength exposes their weakness, your clarity exposes their confusion, your boundaries expose their overreach. Your growth exposes their stagnation. They can't control you anymore, and that truth terrifies them more than losing you ever could. Your silence, self-respect, and consistency become your strongest weapons against manipulation, lies, and emotional games. Toxic people are not weakened by your arguments, your anger, or your attempts to make them understand. They are weakened by your discipline. They are weakened by the moment you stop feeding into their chaos and start feeding into your own self-worth. When someone can no longer shake you with their words, provoke you with their behavior, or pull you into emotional battles, they lose the power they once held over your reactions. And nothing terrifies a manipulator more than losing access to the emotional buttons they use to press so easily. Silence is not weakness. Silence is not avoidance. Silence is the moment you decide that someone's disrespect no longer deserves an answer. When you stop engaging, you're not giving up, you're rising above. You're choosing peace over war, clarity over confusion, strength over noise. Silence sets a boundary louder than any confrontation because it shows you're no longer interested in the back and forth that kept you trapped. Toxic people want attention, even bad attention. They feed on reactions, they thrive on emotional intensity, they love upheaval, drama, and the feeling that they can pull you out of your center. Silence removes that fuel completely. Self-respect is the foundation of everything that changes. It is not something you announce, it is something you demonstrate through your decisions. Self-respect means you stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. It means you stop trying to justify your boundaries to people who never respected them in the first place. It means you no longer negotiate your worth depending on someone else's mood, approval, or validation. When you begin to respect yourself deeply, toxic people see it as a threat because they can no longer treat you casually. You won't tolerate the excuses, the deflections, the half apologies, the patterns of mistreatment that used to keep you emotionally hooked. Self-respect creates a shift they can't control. You begin to speak differently, behave differently, decide differently. You start walking away from conversations that used to trap you for hours. You stop overthinking comments that used to ruin your day. You stop absorbing blame that never belonged to you. They feel the difference even if they never admit it. They feel your emotional detachment. They feel your mental clarity. They feel your distance. And it shakes them because it means their influence over your inner world is dissolving. They can't manipulate someone who finally sees their own value. Consistency is the part that finishes the transformation. Anyone can be strong for a moment. Anyone can be silent for a day. Anyone can pull back for a short period of time. But consistency is what truly removes toxic people from your life, mentally, emotionally, physically. When you consistently choose peace over reactivity, they lose access to the emotional openings they once influenced. When you consistently enforce your boundaries, they stop expecting the version of you they used to take advantage of. When you consistently show that you won't break the cycle by falling for their guilt, their sad stories, their sudden sweetness, or their accusations, they finally understand that the old dynamic is dead. Consistency starves manipulation. It destroys confusion. It removes the gray areas that toxic people thrive in. They can't use your empathy against you. They can't bait you into arguments. They can't guilt trip you into staying connected. They can't make you question yourself. The clarity of your actions becomes a wall they can't penetrate. Your silence makes them talk to themselves. Your self-respect makes them face themselves. Your consistency makes them lose access to you completely. And it's here that something powerful happens. You regain emotional freedom. You begin to notice how peaceful your mind feels without constant battles. How strong you feel without trying to fix someone who benefits from staying broken. How light you feel without carrying the weight of someone else's chaos. You start experiencing life without the emotional turbulence they created. You realize that peace wasn't something you lacked, it was something you weren't choosing because of the people you allowed into your life. Toxic people hate when you become steady. They hate when you become disciplined. They hate when you stop giving them emotional highs and lows. They hate the new version of you that doesn't flinch, doesn't bend, doesn't chase, doesn't react. They hate the version of you that chooses silence instead of shouting, calm instead of chaos, distance instead of drama, because they lose every form of leverage once you stop participating in the emotional game. And during this shift, you also begin to see them more clearly. You notice patterns that used to be invisible. You recognize manipulation in its earliest stage. You see how they switch between the victim role, the hero role, and the attacker role, depending on what benefits them. You see how their words don't match their actions. You see how they expect loyalty without giving respect. And once you see these things clearly, you cannot unsee them. This clarity protects you moving forward. Your silence becomes a shield. Your self-respect becomes a filter. Your consistency becomes your new standard. People who genuinely love you will never be threatened by these qualities. But people who relied on your lack of boundaries will crumble under them. In the end, what they call cold is actually clarity. What they call selfish is actually self-respect. What they call changed is actually growth. They can interpret your transformation however they want, but it doesn't matter. What matters is that you no longer sacrifice your emotional health to keep dysfunctional connections alive. Because the moment you understand your worth, the moment you honor your peace, the moment you stay consistent with the person you're becoming, toxic people lose their grip on your life forever. You don't need to defend yourself. Your growth, discipline, and character expose toxic people far better than any confrontation ever could. The moment you rise above the noise instead of fighting with it, something powerful begins to happen. The truth stops needing your voice because your actions become undeniable. People who once doubted you begin to see the difference between your steady character and someone else's unstable behavior. And toxic people, no matter how loud or dramatic they become, cannot hide who they truly are when you remain grounded, focused, and consistent in who you are becoming. Your growth does the talking that your mouth no longer needs to do. Self-defense through explanation never works with toxic individuals. They don't listen to understand, they listen to twist. They don't want truth, they want control. They don't want clarity, they want chaos that keeps you off balance. The moment you start explaining, they shift the goalposts. The moment you start defending yourself, they attack something new. The moment you try to correct the lies, they create more lies. It's an endless cycle designed to exhaust you. So when you choose not to defend yourself, you're not being passive, you're choosing a strategy they can't fight. You're choosing a form of strength that leaves them powerless. Your growth exposes them in ways arguments never could. When you evolve, you force a comparison they cannot handle. You become calmer while they stay chaotic. You become disciplined while they stay reactive. You become focused while they stay scattered. You heal while they remain stuck. That contrast becomes obvious to everyone around you. They don't need proof. They can feel the difference. Toxic people always reveal themselves when the person they targeted stops participating in the dysfunction. While they're busy trying to make you look bad, your progress makes them look small. Discipline is another silent force that reveals the truth. Toxic people depend on your emotional impulses. They expect you to react quickly, loudly, and defensively. They expect you to explode so they can point at your reaction and say, "See, you're the problem." But when you respond with discipline instead of impulse, calm instead of chaos, they run out of ammunition. Your emotional control shows who truly has the power. And the more disciplined you become, the more unhinged they appear, because they rely on your instability to hide their own. When you refuse to play their game, their behavior becomes visible in its raw form. Character is the ultimate evidence. It is something you don't have to advertise, because it shows up in every action, every decision, every pattern. People can lie with their words, but they cannot lie with their behavior. Over time, what you consistently do becomes the truth everyone trusts. Toxic people try to attract support through stories, exaggerations, and victimhood, but they can never maintain the consistency that real character requires. They switch roles depending on who they're with. They change their narratives depending on what benefits them. They manipulate emotions instead of building trust. Meanwhile, you remain steady, honest, grounded. Even if lies temporarily distract people, character wins in the long run because truth has endurance, while lies have an expiration date. You don't need to prove anything to anyone who has already decided to misunderstand you. People committed to believing lies will not change because of your explanations. But people committed to truth will see the reality eventually because your life will show them. Your path, your achievements, your peace, your evolution, all of that becomes evidence stronger than any defense you could present. Sometimes the best response to false accusations is success. Not the loud, showy kind of success, but the kind of success that happens quietly inside you first. Emotional growth, mental clarity, self-control, maturity. When you rise internally, your external life begins to shift automatically. The better you become, the more obvious the difference between you and the toxic person becomes. While they're busy talking, you're building. While they're busy blaming, you're improving. While they're busy trying to pull you down, you're leveling up. That imbalance eventually exposes the truth without you lifting a finger. One of the most powerful truths you discover during growth is that peace reveals people far faster than conflict does. When you remove yourself from arguments, from drama, from accusations, toxic people lose the stage they perform on. They start unraveling because they no longer have a target. They get restless because there's no reaction to feed off. They become unpredictable because they can't stand the silence. They either escalate their behavior or expose themselves trying. Your refusal to engage becomes a mirror that reflects back everything they've been hiding behind their words. And while they fall apart, something different happens to you. You rise. You gain emotional independence. You gain perspective. You gain power over your own narrative. You realize that their opinion was never the truth. It was merely a reflection of their insecurities. You realize that their criticism was never about you. It was about their fear of losing control. You realize that their lies were never about your character. They were about protecting their own image from the consequences of their behavior. As you grow, the right people start noticing. Those with emotional intelligence recognize authenticity. Those with maturity recognize consistency. Those with discernment recognize truth without being told. You don't have to point fingers, expose lies, or defend your reputation. People with genuine insight can see the difference between someone who is evolving and someone who is spiraling. They can see who is peaceful and who is chaotic. They can see who takes responsibility and who avoids it. Your growth speaks louder than any accusation could. By refusing to defend yourself, you protect your energy. You prevent yourself from being pulled back into emotional traps designed to drain you. You keep your focus where it belongs, on your path, your healing, your future. The people meant for you will understand. The people not meant for you will fall away. And in the end, your life becomes the clearest statement of who you truly are. You never need to defend your character when your character is consistent. You never need to fight liars when your truth is stable. You never need to chase validation when your value is self-defined. Growth reveals what arguments cannot. Discipline reveals what explanations never will. Character reveals what manipulation tries to hide. Your strength shows not when you speak, but when you no longer need to.